Hey folks, this is Riker with a gaming news wrap-up video where we discuss the happenings of the week. This week's topics include the reveal of Activision Blizzard's new mobile Warcraft game, the reveal of the new Path of Exile expansion, a new Diablo 2 record for hitting level 99, and more. As always, discussion timestamps can be found in the description below. But right before you skip ahead, just a quick reminder to ring that sub notification bell to be alerted to new Saturday episodes and stay up to date with gaming news highlights. Now, before I move on, just a quick word from this video's sponsor, Keeps, which is all about keeping your hair. About 2 out of 3 guys will experience some form of male pattern baldness by the time they reach 35. Some men like to lean into that shaved head look, but some enjoy having and styling hair and want to know if they have any options. Now, there's no magic cure for baldness, but there are preventative steps you can take to stop it from progressing and keep the hair you have. Keeps is a subscription service that focuses on making it easier and more affordable for men to treat their male pattern baldness, all from the comfort of their home, using clinically proven, research-backed treatments at about half the cost of a traditional pharmacy. Physicians at Keeps will help pick the right treatment plan for you, and every treatment plan comes with a full year of unlimited messaging, so you can contact your prescribing doctor at any time. And then it's as simple as subscribing and having everything you need delivered right to your door, with refill reminders sent to ensure you don't run out of what you need. Hair loss stops with Keeps. To get 50% off your first order, go to keeps.com/Riker or click the link in the description. That's keeps.com/RHYKKER. In our first story, the Prince of Persia Sands of Time remake, has been handed over to Ubisoft Montreal, the studio responsible for the original Sands of Time trilogy. The remake was first announced in 2020, in development by Ubisoft Mumbai and Ubisoft Pune, and you would have thought the announcement of the remake of a critically acclaimed game would be met with fanfare, but the graphics proved to be a major point of criticism. The original release date was slated to be March 2021, but this was delayed indefinitely, likely due to the criticism. But now the remake is in the hands of the original devs, and I got a good feeling about this one. Ah ouais les gars, montrez-leur comment on le fait à Montréal. Calice. And speaking of Montreal, Square Enix has sold Eidos Montreal, Square Enix Montreal, and Crystal Dynamics to Embracer Group for $300 million. And this includes the rights to Tomb Raider, Deus Ex, Thief, Legacy of Kain, and more than 50 back catalog titles. Square Enix will retain the rights to Just Cause, Outriders, and Life is Strange. This amounts to 1,100 employees from 8 studios worldwide that Embracer Group is opening its arms to envelop. This will bring Embracer's headcount up to over 14,000 employees, 10,000 of which are game devs, across 124 internal studios. The deal is expected to close this summer, pending approval from regulators. Now, Embracer Group has been quietly growing since its founding in 2011 as Nordic Games, just gobbling up assets from defunct publishers. When THQ shut down in 2013, it picked up a bunch of the company's properties, so many that Nordic renamed itself to THQ Nordic in 2016. And then in 2019, THQ Nordic rebranded to Embracer Group to avoid confusion between itself, the publisher, and one of its development studios, also named THQ Nordic, but with the German suffix for a limited liability company. Now, the biggest video game acquisition that Embracer made was last year, when it spent $1.3 billion on the Gearbox Entertainment Company, which includes Cryptic Studios, developers of the Neverwinter MMORPG, and Gearbox Software, developers of the Borderlands franchise. Now, given Embracer spent $1.3 billion on Gearbox, and only $300 million to get the rights to Tomb Raider and Deus Ex, and the studios that made these games, these critically acclaimed games, this feels like a steal. Square Enix seemed to always have unrealistically high expectations of the games that Eidos and Crystal were making. And despite them getting pretty consistently good review scores and good sales, it just kept being not enough, or always saying that they're underperforming relative to expectations. Square Enix acquired Eidos and Crystal back in 2009, and they're now claiming that they're selling them off in order to, quote, enable the launch of new businesses by moving forward with investments in fields including blockchain, AI, and the cloud. In completely unrelated news, as per the Wall Street Journal, the NFT market is flatlining, down 92% since September. In other news, Genshin Impact sales have surpassed $3 billion on mobile alone, which averages out to about $1 billion every 6 months. And according to Sensor Tower data, it is the world's top grossing gacha game in the first quarter of 2022. And development studio MiHoYo says that the Nintendo Switch version of Genshin is still in development. Now, hearing those numbers, it's easy to understand why so many game devs have been wanting in on the mobile market. In other news, Blizzard revealed this week its new Warcraft free-to-play mobile game, Warcraft Arclight Rumble, a fast-paced hero collector strategy game. There's PvE, PvP, over 60 heroes to collect, a single-player campaign, over 70 maps. It's basically Blizzard's version of Raid Shadow Legends, but with Clash Royale gameplay and visual style. And while it is set in the Warcraft universe, it is clearly not being marketed to 40-year-old World of Warcraft players. Its target demographic is obviously a young, mobile player base, as evidenced by the visual style and the lighthearted tones, as well as how the devs presented the game.
Warcraft Arclight Rumble! So what is this game? What is this game?
Some call the dev video cringy, but it feels very self-aware. I think they knew exactly what they were doing. They were having fun with it. They were not taking themselves too seriously. And overall, this feels pretty on the money for exactly what would be expected of a Warcraft mobile game. They're hitting the right demographic. They're combining some of the most successful formulas. They're adding Blizzard polish. It's almost exactly what I expected of a Warcraft mobile game. I didn't expect it to be quite so silly. I expected lighthearted, but not silly, but this direction makes sense when you think of the target demo, which seems to be the children of World of Warcraft players. And I know millions of World of Warcraft players will be upset over it, and it won't matter because Genshin Impact has 60 million players, and even if every WoW fan refuses to play the game, that would barely make a dent in this title's potential audience. Myself personally, I played a lot of tower defense games in the past, particularly as mods or custom maps in StarCraft and Warcraft. I played a ton of Squadron Tower Defense back in StarCraft 2. I don't know if anyone remembers that one, but that was my favorite arcade map. So I can't say I'm excited about the game, but I can see myself playing it now and then. I'll at least try it out when the beta comes out, which is said to be soon. And journalist Jason Schreier confirmed via insider sources that there was, in addition to this, a Pokemon Go-style Warcraft mobile game in the works for some time, but it got cancelled. If I had to guess, I think lockdowns are what canned that project. A couple of years ago, a Pokemon Go-style Warcraft game made a lot of sense. 1 year ago, not so much. On to Path of Exile news. This week saw the reveal of the newest expansion, Sentinel, which has you collect Pokemon. Well, not quite, but kind of. Sentinels are these constructs that you can deploy, and they follow you around and attack monsters, but rather than deal damage to monsters, they empower the monsters to be a greater threat, but also have better rewards. There's 3 types of Sentinel, and you can eventually equip one of each. One lasts 30 seconds and shoots at every monster you engage. A second is a one-shot nuke at your command, so you want to build up a huge amount of density on screen. And the third only empowers rare or unique enemies. So there will be some strategy involved in deciding when to pop which Sentinel. Furthermore, Sentinels are items. They have modifiers of their own. They also run out of battery. Once depleted, you can take 2 depleted Sentinels and combine them to create a new Sentinel, which will tend to be more powerful and incorporate some properties of both Sentinels. So the more you play, the more powerful your Sentinels grow over time. This expansion will also include Atlas endgame improvements. In fact, the devs said that every expansion from now until Path of Exile 2 will include endgame improvements. Controller support will launch for PC with this expansion. There'll be lots of quality of life improvements. But, as a first, there will be no balance changes to classes. No nerfs, no buffs to player skills at all. However, instead, monster modifiers will be getting rebalanced. Now, this news has been met with some controversy among players, which is understandable. If you give someone a cookie every time they visit you, and you do this for years, and then one day they visit you and you don't give them a cookie, there will be understandable disappointment. On a personal level, I think for the vast majority of players, it's not a big deal that there's no build changes. I'd be very surprised if most players have already played all the meta builds. So if last expansion, for argument's sake, added 10 new meta builds, The average player has played, what, maybe a couple max, so there's still more builds to try. Still though, I understand why some people would be disappointed. No cookie. But one of the biggest highlights of the reveal was this shot fired across the bow.
And we're ignoring the fact that Diablo Immortal comes out in a few weeks, by the way, guys. That's not a game. We're going to play Path of Exile. But
ouch. In Lost Ark news, we learned this week that the Destroyer class will be releasing this month with the reworks he got in the Korean version of the game. Improvements to make the class more appealing. And this is good news not just because it improves the class, but because it would be a little awkward to release the class and then very rapidly thereafter roll out the reworks from the Korean version. The Destroyer is one of the slower melee classes, but it's not as slow as the Gun Lancer. Now, the May update is expected on May 19th and also includes Valentine, the first Legion raid, which is a challenging 8-player raid that requires teamwork and coordination. There's a new Guardian raid, there's new PvE and PvP guild activities. This will also introduce Neria's wardrobe, which will include cosmetics that come in pieces rather than whole sets. There's also going to be a bunch of quality of life improvements and some balance changes. On to Diablo news. WoW had collected stats visible within the Diablo 2 Resurrected ladder leaderboard, and they determined that within the first 3 days of the game's first ladder season, which began last Friday, over 500,000 players ranked on the leaderboards, meaning they made a ladder character. Wowhead also showed a breakdown between softcore and hardcore, as well as classic and expansion. So of the 500,000, 450,000 were expansion softcore characters. Less than a tenth of that, 35,000, were expansion hardcore, 13,000 were classic softcore, and 1,000 were classic hardcore. A classic character is one that does not have access to the expansion. You have a choice when creating a character to make a pre-expansion character and not have access to the expansion content. Now, we learned recently that D2R has sold over 5 million units since its launch, so that means about 10% of those people played in the first 3 days of season. I would be curious to see what the updated stats are now a week later. I think for a lot of people, D2R was something that was just going to be a nostalgia trip. Buy it once, play it, maybe do one serious push, and then put it aside while being very satisfied. It was certainly never expected to retain 100% of its player base as ongoing players indefinitely. And I turn the question to you folks. If you purchase D2R, are you playing in the ladder? Why or why not? Sound off in the comments. And speaking of the first few days of ladder, a new record has been set for reaching level 99. Diablo 2 Master Speedrunner Teo, with the help of the Max Roll team plus a number of other community members, reached level 99 in 7 days and 10 hours, which is a full 3 days and 10 hours faster than the world record. This required an absolutely enormous amount of dedication and sleep deprivation from Teo, as well as the community of people that were supporting him in this run, without whom it would not have been possible, because they were utilizing strategies that required him to have a team around him helping him out. A degree of dedication, a degree of communication, coordination, synchronicity that you don't see in gaming, that you see in Olympic events. And the beautiful thing is that Teo named his character Teo_Unsullied in tribute of a fallen community member. Unsullied was a fellow speedrunner that had been a great part of the community. He himself was a speedrunner that ran with Teo and others within the speedrunning community. And the original plan to push to level 99 in ladder was to have Unsullied part of this group, but sadly he passed away on October 16th, 2021. Now though, his name will forever be immortalized on the leaderboards at rank 1. And if you want to read more about this and the strategies utilized, you'll be able to do so on maxroll.gg, because that's going to wrap up this week's video. But do be sure to have checked out last week's video, in which we discussed more reasons to think Diablo 4's release may be sooner than you think. Thanks for watching. Special thanks to my Twitch, Patreon, and YouTube supporters for making these videos possible. If you like what you see on this channel and want to support the creation of more content, you can consider pledging on YouTube or Patreon and unlocking behind-the-scenes content, monthly virtual hangouts, and more. If you enjoyed this video, please share it, check out these other videos, and subscribe to join Riker's Raiders for more gaming content.